What links buildings, bridges, busy roads and the whizzy things that go on them? Well, all of them have been designed by someone, but what goes on inside a designer's head? What are their thought processes to come up with striking images? How do they arrive at their final product? And why am I in a Star Trek uniform? All good questions, of course they are. I came up with them, and I just so happened to have found such a designer. And as this channel is about flags, this designer has their own colouring in of a city flag officially adopted, so it's probably the best qualified to answer such questions.
So with me, I've got Eric Hart. And before I explain why I've got Eric Hart in detail, it's probably best that I ask Eric why he's here, what he's been doing, and the link with flags. Eric, how are you?
I'm very, very, very good. I'm so happy to be here to talk to you today. Yeah.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you very much. So first of all, flags. I mean, that's what we're here for. Tell me just a tiny little bit of your involvement with flags.
Sure. So I am an 8th generation Syracusan, Syracuse, New York. Had a design competition to redesign their poorly designed city flag that they had, and I just so happened to have won that redesign competition.
Well, congratulations, first of all. So tell us a little bit about First Light then.
But First Light is a flag that represents Syracuse in a way that I think off the bat, I would describe it as sort of geographic. And so it sits within an area of land that has these very beautiful rolling hills. Part of that is there is a place within there called the Valley. That's where I was born and raised. And so you have the Valley, which I would say is here. And you have the not mountains, but like hills that would roll up to either the west or the east side of the valley here, and you have the sun coming up over, sharing its light upon the valley and the rolling hills of Syracuse, sort of all in one. And so I would say it starts there with that. The 6 points of the star represent the 6 nations of the Haudenosaunee, which is a Native American confederacy, them living on the land, us unfortunately taking the land from them. And so everything that we have within Syracuse, I wanted to make sure that I was paying respect to that group of people. And so you have 6 nations, 6 points of the star. So also, Syracuse had 6 prior names before Syracuse. And so I wanted to pay homage to those past 6 names by also having 6 points of this star as well. And so in terms of my research and what I was reading as I was sort of starting to design things, and I was things were condensing into my usage of maybe it's going to be a star, how many points of that star is it going to be? It did seem from my research that 5-pointed stars tend to be used more for state flags or like the country itself. From what I read from the research was that you can use, or you should use, something that's slightly different from that for municipal flags. So I look at something like Chicago is brought up a lot because that has a 6-pointed star, as does this. The 6-pointed star really seemed to work very well for this one, just in terms of like the symbology with the Haudenosaunee and the
it's perfect. And just run me through the color schemes then that you've got there.
Syracuse has Syracuse University, and a very long time ago, 1860s or so, they had a very old color palette for the university. I believe it was sort of like a lime green and a pink, like a rose pink kind of thing. And they decided, since all of the people in their like all of the students in the faculty hated that color scheme, they wanted a new one. And so they ended up looking upon one of many things being the New York flag, or the idea of the Dutch coming in and founding New York as New Amsterdam, and the Prince of Orange and that sort of thing. And so orange kind of was one of the reasons why they chose that, among other reasons. And blue came into that as well. So you have this orange and blue, and you see white kind of sneak in every now and then. And so right off the bat, when Syracusans see these 3 colors here, they go, oh, that's a university flag. In my eyes, this orange, the orange that was sort of adopted by the university and propagated henceforth, I like to say that orange has ripened along with the city as the city was growing from that point forward until today. I like to say that it has broken the bonds of history in that regard. It's broken the bonds of the university. It is this language that Syracusans speak, this orange. Orange is its frequency that we all vibrate on. Orange is Syracuse now. And so it has nothing to do with the university. I like to get that out of the way. Also, Syracuse having certain problems in its city's history. I thought orange representing restoration, regeneration was quite important. I needed a color to kind of convey that. It's also a very passionate color. It's a courageous color. It's a color for creativity. And these are all things that represent the people as well. And I think I'll move into the white because they kind of work together in a special way there. Syracuse was known for evaporating basically salt water. It would evaporate the water and we would be having this salt remaining, and then we would ship that out through the Erie Canal to basically, I think we were the biggest supplier of salt for quite a while in the United States. I think white and orange, very important that they touch one another because they're sort of linked in the symbology like that. This azure blue, this is for the city representative of a lake that's very, very important to the city called Onondaga Lake. Onondaga is the county that we live in. It's the land. It's the one of the nations of the Haudenosaunee. It's actually the capital nation of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy of the Six. They are the capital. They call themselves the Central Fire. It's a color that represents perseverance and intelligence. We have a pretty large growing tech hub in Syracuse now, and that's sort of a forward-looking symbolism that I liked to have included. And I think I'll move on to the final color here, which is navy blue, symbolic of the rock, the hard earth, the dirt of the land of Onondaga upon which Syracuse resides. So you have the water, the sun, and the land. Lots of blue collar workers really built the city up, and so I wanted to have that represented here in terms of the history. And
in that case, then, after winning a competition and now having your flag officially adopted, is this your first attempt at a flag in any respect?
This is my first ever flag, and so I find that funny. Design as a process allows someone to sort of solve a problem, and no matter sort of what the problem is. And so I was able to take what I've learned over these last 13 years as a professional designer, and then attack this as just any other problem that I would have been working on otherwise. And so if anything, this is a sort of the design process that everyone in the world worked on needs a round of applause for this, because design in general needs a round of applause for this. Yeah.
So what made you attempt to go through this? And well, I suppose being an 8th generation probably plays a big part of it, but I'll let you answer why you decided to go for this competition.
Just browsing Instagram one night in bed, I see that there's this flag competition that's creeping up, and this chain reaction just kind of went off, like, oh, like now is my time to do this. Just because of everything sort of aligned perfectly. And so I remember just kind of sketching on my phone with my finger, and I remember telling myself, if I wake up in the morning and I look at these sketches and it stirs something within me still, if I'm feeling powerfully about this, then I'll continue this project. And if I wake up and I look at them and I go, I don't really feel it, I'll just kind of let it go. And I remember waking up in the morning excited to even look at the sketches, and then seeing the sketches and going, yeah, I'm gonna definitely try this. But if I'm going to try it, I'm going to give it everything I have. And that was sort of the beginning point.
So how do you even go about coming up with the ideas? What's the creative thought process that goes into?
I can jump on a challenge like this quite easily within just this using and utilizing the skills of and the process of design. And so design has a very clear process. Identify a problem, come up with solutions, make sure that the solutions work against the problem. And if they don't, go back to the drawing board, repeat. You can test, you can, reach out to your audience or your user base and get feedback, and then re-implement things and change it again and make sure and butt it back up against the goals that you had, and to make sure that you're solving the problem. And so within that scope of what design allows me, it was very simple for me to just kind of start on this. And so the problem being, the Syracuse flag was, for all intents and purposes, ugly and didn't really communicate anything about what the city was in terms of its relationship to the people. So what could the solution be? And I know that it needs to be something that represents the people. I know that it needs to be something that represents the land, hopefully the history and the future. So I'm thinking in my head, okay, I have the problem, I have my goal and what I want. Who's the audience? The audience is going to be Syracusans, obviously, but sort of from all walks of life. I want anybody in Syracuse that's lived there, that plans to live there, that doesn't live there anymore, but was raised there. Maybe 4 generations of a person who's outside of the city, but their great grandparents were raised there. Anyone who has a connection to Syracuse is the audience. And so I know that those people are the those are the people whose hearts I have to hit with this thing.
That's quite a responsibility, isn't it?
It is. It's scary sometimes. But I think as you go through as a designer on any project, every project, you have these scary moments, and you do learn to stick to the process. And if you stick to the process and you make decisions based on the process that you've set up for yourself, you can see yourself to the end of that process and be happy with the results.
What are some of the things then that you have designed in the past, other than the flag? What other things have you turned your hands to?
I've designed as solutions to problems, packaging designs, websites, mobile applications, landing pages for companies, banner advertisements, like anything for corporate businesses, like business cards and brochures and letterheads. And then that went forward, and when I got into Japan, it was much more product design focused. So anything that you'd be downloading from like the App Store or the Android store to your phone, lots of that kind of stuff, which gets into more user interface and user experience design. Sort of all of these things are very different from one another.
Yeah, but I say so. The process then is, in its rawest, is pretty much the same as you say. If you're trying to come up with a solution to a problem, I guess that's the blueprint that works for anything that has a problem that you need to solve.
Absolutely. It's slightly different depending on what your solution needs to be in the end.
I suppose it's, where does the inspiration come? I suppose it's got to be very unique to each specific project, of where you draw inspiration to come up with these things, just to give it that edge. Because I tell you one thing then that I picked up on a previous interview you did, it was with the flag, with the colors, and when you there's a slightly different version when you pull back, as I call it, where you've got colors overlapping each other. Just explain where you get the inspiration of that, because I found that quite fascinating.
Sure, yeah. And so in this case, the challenge that I was facing there, and this was a design challenge, is that you have this flag here behind me, and the points end here in the center. And from a flag design standpoint, that's fine. But once I start to try to sort of remix this design or expand upon this design or market this design or use this sort of these colors and the shapes for branding, what happens if I need to, extend the bottom of this flag? What happens to where these two triangles meet? It could be a straight line, which fine, it gets the job done, but is it aesthetically pleasing? Is there any other considerations there that could potentially push this into something that's more unique and interesting? And you could wrap it this way, or you could wrap it this way. You might not even do anything here. You just might let it stay there and then paint a different color under it. I mean, there's many different ways to do that. And so I was struggling with that problem, and I needed to solve it. and I'm looking around the room and I'm sketching, and I see clothing over here in my room here in Yokohama at the time, and I notice overlapping fabric in a kimono, and I'm going, that's very interesting. That could be something. That could be something I could use. And so I'm looking at this and I'm going, huh, let me think through this. I know that in wearing a kimono, there is a certain way that they drape. And so when they drape a certain way, it's used for daily use. I believe it's right over left. And the other side is when the left is over the right, is when usually in like Japanese culture, if somebody passes away and their body needs to be wrapped for the funeral, they will wrap the left side over the right, sort of indicating that that is only for them. And so I liked that idea of wrapping. I liked that it was in front of me. I liked that it came from my environment, and I was happy to give it more time to think through. It's a very small little Easter egg. No one else is ever going to look at it and say, look, he's wrapped the right side over the left, and so that's kosher. Like, no one's going to think about that ever. But I had to do it, and I wanted to do it, and I'm happy that I was able to get it to give the thought process to that problem.
You see, it's little things like that, as you say, the little Easter egg, which I'm a stickler for, and so when I heard you explain that on the flag for content piece, I thought that was such a, as you say, 99.9% of the people who would ever see that wouldn't even give it a second thought and just go, that looks good. And probably not even acknowledge it, to be fair. But it's those tiny details, and I think, and that's the bit that fascinates me, is that as you say, the flag in itself, it all comes to a point at the bottom of the flag itself. But to sit there, and I know you did this before the competition was even concluded, so you'd thought all of this way before. To come up with all the potential sort of fallout of it being the official flag, I think to have that already in the bag, so it's just if it's one, there you are, the whole thing's ready. Off you go.
Yes.
So I assume then that's how you do it. I assume with every project that you've been on, you're thinking right down to the nth degree, to the minute detail, I'm guessing.
Yes, absolutely. So I mean, I approach this project like any others that I would ever worked on, which is, do it until you can't do it anymore. Do it, think about it like no one else will ever think about it. Think about every single problem that could come up about it and have a way to get around it. Don't find out all the corners that you would have backed yourself into, so that not to back yourself into those corners, and sort of, you need this 1 million foot view of the whole project. I do, at least, so that I can see exactly where things are going and where they're headed right from the beginning. And so, I mean, I have my sketches here. Like, the beginning was this. I don't think that that's going to show up well with my background there. Sorry about that. But, the beginning was just this.
Oh my goodness.
From these sketches, it develops into a thing that I can really rally behind. And then once I get there, I go, it's time to go nuts. I can really flush this thing out. And I mean, I didn't want to give the judges any other chance. All the feedback that I was getting from my friends and family changed from that's boring and that doesn't reflect me, and it now is sounding like, oh wow, that's great. That does reflect me, and that is energetic, and that is interesting to look at, and I think that that's something that we could rally behind. And so when all of that came together, it's like, okay, I need a website, because I'm not going to send this to the judges in like a PDF or something. I want a URL to just throw in an email and just be like, click this. And then they click it, and then it's like, wow, look at all of this stuff. That's what I want. And then that's what I knew I was headed there. And so, okay, I need to get a flag printed, of course. I know that the chances of this winning is fairly low, but if I want to tell this story, I want video. And I can't make video unless I have a real flag. And I want a real flag because I'm actually really happy with the job that I've done. So whether I win or lose, I actually want a copy of an actual flag to keep for myself. But now that I have this website and now that I have a flag, I can make, videos of it waving in the sky. Great. And then I can put that as, part of the homepage, like that folks land on. I can put it behind a logo. Oh, I need a logo. Let's make a logo. And now I have a logo, and now I have a video, and now I have a website. And it's like, oh, I need to do this, and I need to do that, and I need to do this, and I need to do that. And if I have this, I need to do that. And I was so into it, it just did not stop. And so it was like, okay, I need all of these mock-ups, because it's very important as a designer, especially when you're in this phase. This is very sort of interesting phase and a very important phase of the project, is when you're trying to get buy-in from people. One of the ways you do that in any design is to show it as it would be in reality.
So if I've got this right, when it comes to the finished design, am I right in saying that you had the design as it is, but many different themes before you actually chose the final version?
Yeah, and I didn't really even know exactly what themes it was going to be. I look at the sketches here that I had now, and I just started with, I wrote down the words basic shapes, and then I was really just kind of jotting down general flag type shapes, common shapes that you would see in flags. Once I kind of got that out of the system, and that was mostly down on paper, I would transfer that stuff into a digital file, a digital design file, and that would allow me a lot more flexibility to start moving shapes around quickly and, giving different colors quickly. Like the themes just sort of naturally presented themselves in a strange way. And so I believe the first theme that I landed on was this theme of crossroads, because Syracuse is actually in the center of New York State. And so that idea sort of lent itself to certain shapes and certain ideas and certain colors in my head that were coming up. And so I would run down that theme until it was just bone dry, and I could not go any further with Crossroads. And so it was like, I need a fresh start. I'm going to pivot 100% into something completely different. I remember coming to this one and I was thinking, okay, I'm done. This is it. And it was, if you could zoom out of what this flag was from a shape perspective, if you could kind of pull out, and you would get the other side of this hill and the other side of that hill, it was kind of starting there. And there might have been a shape or a bar or something above it. Maybe this wasn't quite the color that was used here. Maybe there was another point or not another point here, but it was kind of in the ballpark. And so I said, okay, how now I'm sort of on this level that feels good. Geography feels good, because buildings go away, people go away, names go away. What doesn't leave a city is its geography. The hills stay. I'm an eighth generation Syracuse, and those hills are the same hills the eighth generation, family member all the way back saw. And hopefully they're going to be the same hills that eighth generations ahead of me see. And that sun isn't going to change. I mean, not for millions of years, but that sun's going to be the same sun that anybody is going to see. That's the snow, although we've got some interesting weather patterns coming through now due to climate change, but like that, it's still known for snow. And and even in the future, if it is not known for snow anymore, it was at one time known for snow, and it was at one time known for salt. These things can't be taken away. They can't be given away. They can't be removed. They're not going to die. So this is a track that I think is going to be a long lasting kind of thing. And so how do I make this even more simple? And so now I was on a track of geographic, but simplicity. How do I make this more simple? And to really dumb it down, I just zoomed in. I mean, it sounds quite simple, but to just do that was not simple. But I zoomed in, and then I get to a certain point. I think it was one or the other colors, and it was the same color, whether or not it was the dark blue or this azure blue. And I remember feeling, there's not enough symbolism. I need one more piece. And I don't like the uniformity between the two. It was too symmetrical down the center. I need something to make it a little bit more unique, and something to offset, this from a visual standpoint, because it's attached here at the hoist to the pole, visually is heavy. And so, well, maybe I could go with a darker color on the fly to balance out the heaviness. from a visual standpoint. And so I went that route, and it allowed me to rope in another color that could represent the water, because I was missing the water part of it. And so throughout that entire process, this was the 270th flag that I produced, and it was the last one that it works. And so that was not something that surprised me, that it was going to take that long or that it was going to be that many. I knew, and I was prepared for that, just because in my experience, that is what design is. That's the process. It's create and burn 270 times until you get the thing that solves the problem correctly. And so
So
it was a lot, but I'm
yeah.
very pleased with it.
Oh, absolutely, and you should be. But am I right then with how you've just described that? Does that mean that the sun was potentially one of the last elements to go into the flag, or the star? Sorry.
From what I remember, I was tinkering with the idea of stars earlier on,
Right.
and they were in 5-pointed variations and 8-pointed variations and different colored variations. Sometimes they weren't in the center, sometimes they were off to one or the other sides. And then I got away from it for a while. I sort of was down a different path, and it was circular for a while, where it was more of a, I'm in Japan, it was more of a rising sun in that regard, because I was pulling some of my inspiration for this flag from Japan as well. It's a place that has given me a lot, and I love it. And so that's one of those tiny little Easter eggs just for me and for you now and for your viewers now, is that you have the white here and then the rising sun. And so tiny little thing, but that's not symbolism that I've really baked in. That's just a wink and a nod for me, in my experience. But it was a circle for a while,
Right.
and I would get away from it and I would come back to it, and I would say, this is working in a different way. It was a sun, but the symbolism was slightly different. It wasn't rising up over anything. It was just a sun. And once the geography made its way in, and once that symbolism started to work, it wasn't just a sun anymore. It's a sun rising up over the hills in the valley of Onondaga. And that's what I needed. That was that little bit that gave it life.
I think its simplicity is, from a visual perspective, is breathtaking. To then understand the whole nuances, and they are really nuances that sit behind it, I think just gives it so much more life. And I think Syracuse is very lucky to have such a marvelous flag, and you've done them wonders. Obviously, I'm sure the other 7 generations would be proud of what you've been able to deliver as well. It's fantastic.
Thank you. I feel this other 7 generations, on the shoulders. I do.
Oh, rightly so.
It's a heavy feeling. It's not all joy. It's a heavy and sort of, not a
Yeah.
burden. Honor. Yeah. It's an honor. Yeah.
I've just got one final other question, which is very important, of course.
Sure.
So with all the influences and the backgrounds and the way you design stuff and the way you tackle it, and the challenges that you have, what is your favorite TV show?
Yeah, that's a good one, especially in how it how it works its way into my design process. I have a good one, and and I'm gonna tell you why. It's because it was playing in the background quite a lot while I was working on this.
Even better.
So whether or not it's my favorite, it's up there. But it was certainly playing in my aura as I was creating this flag, and it is Star Trek: The Next Generation.
You are my new best friend.
To the wonderful Eric Hart for being so passionate about his flag and the process. Links to him and his sites are below. And the unabridged version of this interview can also be found on the link above, where you get an additional 40 minutes of Eric's insights. To check out more City Flag episodes, go to the playlist here. And if you'll excuse me, I must dash. Enterprise, one to beam up. I've always wanted to do this.